We are live. Welcome to the first episode. Well, give me 1 second. I gotta change something in my sound settings here. Alright, that's a lot better. Welcome to the first episode of the audiobook / read aloud of Human, All Too Human, written by obviously Nietzsche, translated by Marion Faber with Stephen Lehman. The introduction and notes are done by Marion Faber, and the new introduction is done by Arthur C. Danto. This is the copy that I'll be reading from if you guys want to follow along with this book. A little bit of context as to why I am reading this book. I guess it's not that important, but it was a gift from my father. He said he read it in college, and it was a very important book to him. So I want to see if it has that same effect on me. And I've always kind of wanted to do kind of like a read aloud / like kind of make my own audiobook with this kind of thing. So borrowing a pretty nice mic from my buddy Vincent. Again, the sock is there. Apparently it's good for like the wind or maybe popping sounds. So hopefully the audio sounds good. If you're watching this live and the audio doesn't sound very good, please just type in the chat and I will adjust that to make it sound, high quality. Because I want, if you're watching or listening along, I want the highest quality for you guys, and I want you to really just enjoy the experience. Anyways, this is my first Nietzsche book, first kind of philosophy book in general. So not too sure what to expect with it, but thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. I think in the title I put that I'm just reading the introduction. I don't even know if I'll finish the introduction because the introduction is kind of long. Actually, introduction is XXXIX, so 39 pages. I think, yeah, 39 pages. It's not bad. I think I could go through 39 pages here. Shouldn't be too hard. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me get my posture good here. Okay. Human, All Too Human must be judged quite differently, depending upon whether we view it retrospectively in the perspective of the author whose first philosophical work, properly speaking, it was. When Nietzsche wrote it, he had behind him the extraordinary The Birth of Tragedy Out of the Spirit of Music, published in 1872, a work of speculative philology. Anyways, throughout the course of this video, I apologize if I kind of stumble on some words or, make some mistakes here and there. I think it's pretty normal, so you guys will have to just kind of excuse me on that. I like to think that I'm a good, reader or read-alouder, if that's even a word. But obviously, this is a challenging book. Sometimes some bigger words, which I might, just kind of stumble on here and there, but I'll try to keep it at a minimum. Okay. When Nietzsche wrote it, he had behind him the extraordinary The British of Tragedy Out of the Spirit of Music, published in 1872, a work of speculative philology, and 4 of a projected suite of 13 pamphlets of cultural criticism, published as Thoughts Out of Season, 1873 to 76, to use the poetic Edwardian translation of their overall time. These works show evidence not only of philosophical literacy, but out of extraordinary philosophical imagination. But in time, Nietzsche did not confront directly, and as a philosopher, the canonical question of philosophy. This he began to do in Human, All Too Human, but he had other intentions as well, which in some ways screened the depth and daring of its philosophical thought. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to move this mic here. And I also turned down the piano music. I thought it'd be kind of a nice touch, but now it's kind of just annoying. Okay. In Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche appropriated from Schopenhauer the tremendous distinction between will and idea, which he mythologized as opposed but contemplatory aesthetic principles associated with the deities Dionysus and Apollo, and embodied respectively in music and sculpture, whose joint offspring was tragedy and ultimately opera. But the Birth of Tragedy was at the time an exercise in late romantic visionary social philosophy. All right. It postulated a form of artistic practice in which an entire community participated, in which individuals were, and this was an appropriation from Hegel, negated and transcended, brought into a higher redemptive plane of communication existence through being taken up into a dramatic action in which the distinction between audience and actors were overcome. What had been audience became chorus, and what had been actors became vehicles through which God were felt to make themselves manifest to all. If this indeed happened in the past, it could be principle happen again under the auspices of Wagnerian opera, appreciated as the rebirth of tragedy. Opera, enacting myths which would be internalized by viewers, would achieve for modern men and women what tragedy had achieved for the ancients. Sorry, it's also bad allergies, so when I talk, it kind of agitates the mucus in my nose. Let me see if anybody's even watching this. Let's see. Oh, damn. 0 concurrent viewers. Thanks, guys. My back kind of hurts. What had been audience became chorus, and what had been actors became vehicles through which God were felt to make themselves manifest to all. Oh my gosh, sorry, my allergies are just being really annoying right now. It would dissolve and then reconstitute as some exalted level, the bonds of the society. We would become chorus, then celebrants, then participants in some overwhelming, uniting revelation. One might read Thoughts Out of Season as an effort to vindicate a book like The Birth of Tragedy, and to suggest reforms and revisions in German educational practice which would put the enhancements of life as the center and criterion of scholarship. In a sense, Schopenhauer and Wagner were the Apollo and Dionysus of Nietzsche's thought. They embodied, as it were, idea and will respectively, so that just as the tragedy was the product of the arts of form and frenzy, Nietzscheism thought might be the product of philosophy and of opera. So inevitably there was a pamphlet on Schopenhauer as educator and honestly, I don't even think I need to read this. Like, this is like introduction. This isn't even the guy. So I apologize if you guys came here for the reading of the introduction, but I'm not reading that, you know. Also, give me 1 second. I'm gonna just check the audio quality of this. Today's episode is more of kind of like just an experiment. It's trying to set up the thing. Seeing if the mic quality is good, that kind of thing. If this is actually a feasible idea or not. So the audio quality of this. Schopenhauer. Back kind of hurts. It might be the product of philosophy and of opera. So inevitably there was a pamphlet on Schopenhauer Schopenhauer as educator and honestly, I don't even think I need to read this. Yeah, fuck this shit. I'm not reading this. Alright, beginning to be Nietzsche. Often enough, and always with great consternation, people have told me that there is something distinctive in all my writings. For a time I reviewed the various occupations of men in this life, trying to choose out the best, and without wishing to say anything of the employments of others, I thought that I could not do better than continue in the one in which I found myself engaged. This is to say, in occupying my whole life in cultivating my reason, and in advancing as much as possible the knowledge of the truth in accordance with the method which I had prescribed myself. I had tasted so much satisfaction since beginning to use this method, that I did not believe that anything sweeter or more innocent could be found in this life. Every day I discover, by its means of something new that seemed to me sufficiently important and not at all familiar to other men. The joy which I had so filled my soul that all else seemed to have no account. Alright, now there's a whole paragraph of just French, so I'm not reading that, obviously. I don't know why it's like that. Oh wait, that's just the preface. Oh wait. Damn, preface is like 5 pages. Okay, whatever. Ugh, I need some nasal spray or something. The Birth of Tragedy to the most recent published Prologue to a Philosophy of the Future, all of them, I had been told, contained snares and nets for careless birds, and an almost constant, unperceived challenge to reserve one's habitual estimations and esteemed habits. What's that? Everything is only human, all too human. Which such a sigh comes from my writings, they say, with a kind of wariness and distrust even toward morality, indeed tempted and encouraged in no small way to become the spokesman for the worst things. Might they perhaps be the only slandered? My writings have been called a school for suspicion, even more for content, fortunately also for courage, and in fact for daring. Truly, I myself do not believe that anyone has ever looked into the world with such deep suspicion, and not only an occasional devil's advocate, but every bit as much, to speak theologically, as an enemy and the challenger of God. Whoever guesses something of the consequences of any deep suspicion, something of the chills and fears stemming from isolation, to which every man burdened with an unconditional difference of viewpoints is condemned, this person will understand how often I tried to take the shelter else somewhere, to recover from myself, as if to forget myself entirely for a time, in some sort of reverence, or enmity, or scholarliness, or frivolity, or stupidity, and he will also understand why, when I could not find what I needed, I had to gain it by force artificially, to counterfeit it, or to create it poetically. And what have poets ever done otherwise? And what else do we have all the arts in the why else do we have all the other arts in the world? What I always needed the most to cure and restore myself, however, was the belief that I was not the only one to be thus, to see thus. I needed the enchanting intuition of kinship, an equality in the eye and a desire, bespoken of trusted friendship. I needed a shared blindness, with no suspicion or question marks, a pleasure in foregrounds, surfaces, what is nearest, in everything that has color, skin, and appearance. Perhaps one could accuse me in the regard of some sort of art, various sorts of finer counterfeiting. For example, that I had deliberately and willfully closed my eyes to Schopenhauer's blind will to morality at a time when I was already clear-sighted enough about morality. Similarly, that I had deceived myself about Richard Wagner's incurable romanticism. As if it were a beginning and not an end. Similarly about the Greeks, similarly about the Germans and their future, and there might be a whole long list of such similarities. But even if this all were true, and I were accused of it with good reason, And what do you know? What could you know about the amount of self-preserving cunning of a reason and higher protection of that is required in such self-deception? And how much falseness and I still require, so that I may keep permitting myself the luxury of my truthfulness? Enough, I am still alive, and life has not been devised by morality. It wants deception. It lives on deception. But wouldn't you know it? Here I am, beginning again, doing what I have always done, the old immoralist of the birdcatcher, and I am speaking immorally, extramorally, beyond good and evil. Thus I invented, when I needed them, the free spirits too, to whom this heavy-hearted, stouth-hearted book with the title Human, All Too Human is dedicated. There are no such free spirits there are no such free spirits were none, but as I said, I needed their company at the time, to be of good cheer in the midst of bad things, illness, isolation, furriness, sloth, and activity, as brave fellows and spectres to chat and laugh with, when one feels like chatting and laughing, and whom one sends to hell when they get boring, as reparation for lacking friends. That there could someday be such free spirits, that our Europe will have such lively, daring fellows among its sons of tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, real and palpable, and not merely, as in my case, phantoms and a hermit's shadow play. I am the last person to want to doubt that. I already see the coming, slowly, slowly, and perhaps I am doing something to hasten their coming when I describe before the fact that fateful conditions that I see giving rise to them, the paths on which I see them coming. It may be conjectured that the decisive event for a spirit in whom the type of the free spirit is one day to ripen to sweet perfection has been a great separation, and that before it he was probably all the more or a bound spirit, and he seemed to be chained forever to his corner, to his post. What blinds most firmly? Which cords can almost not be torn? With men of a high and selected type, it will be their obligations, that awe which befits the young, their diffidence and delicacy before all that is time-honored and dignified, their gratitude for the ground and out of which they grew, for the hand that led them, for the shrine where they learned to worship, their own highest moments will bind them most firmly and oblige them most lastingly. For such bound people, the great separation comes suddenly, like the shock of an earthquake. All at once the young soul is devastated, torn loose, torn out. It itself does not know what is happening. An urge, a pressure governs it, mastering the soul like a command. The will and wish awaken to go away, anywhere at any cost. A violent, dangerous curiosity for an undiscovered world flames up and flickers in all senses. Better to die than to live here, so sounds as the imperious and seductive voice. And this here, this at home, is everything which it had loved until then. A sudden horror and suspicion of which it loved, a lighting flash of contempt towards that which was its obligation, a rebellious, dyspeptic, volcanically jolting desire to roam abroad, to become alienated, cool, sober, icy, a hatred of where it had until then worshipped and loved, perhaps a blush of shame at its most decent or recent act, and at the same time jubilation that it was done, a drunken inner jubilant shudder, which betrays a victory over what, over whom, a puzzling questionable victory, but the first victory nevertheless. Such bad and painful things are part of the history of the great separation. It is also disease that can destroy man, the first outburst of strength and will to self-determination, self-valoration, this will to free will, and how much disease is expressed by the wild attempts and peculiarities with which the freedman, the separated man, now tries to prove his rule over things. He wanders about savagely with an unsatisfied lust. His booty must atone for the dangerous tension of his pride. He rips apart what attracts him. With an evil laugh, he overturns what he finds concealed, spared until then by some shame. He investigates how these things look at when they are overturned. There is some arbitrariness and pleasure in arbitrariness to it, if he then perhaps directs this his favor to that enticingly around what is most forbidden. Behind his ranging activity, for he is journeying restlessly and aimlessly, as in a desert, stands the question mark of an ever more dangerous curiosity. Cannot all values be overturned, and is good perhaps evil, and God only be invention, a nicety of the devil? Is everything perhaps ultimately false? And if we are deceived, are we not for that very reason also deceivers? Must we not be deceivers too? Wait, Loki, this sounds better without the headphones. Little break. Getting thirsty. It's just kind of boring at first. I don't know. Hopefully it gets more interesting. I think it's just because this is like the preface, you know. Some thoughts lead and mislead them. Always further onward, always further away. Loneliness surrounds him, curls round him, ever more threatening, strangling, heart-constricting, that fearful goddess in mater seva cupidinum. But who today knows what loneliness is? It is still a long way from this morbid isolation, from the desert of these experimental years to that enormous overflowing certainty in health which cannot do without even illness itself as an instrument and fishhook of knowledge, to that mature freedom of the spirit which is fully as much self-mastery and discipline of the heart, and which permits paths to many opposing ways of thought. It is a long way to the inner spaciousness and consetting of a superabundance which precludes the danger that the spirit might lose itself on its own path and fall in love and stay put, intoxicated in some nook. A long way to that excess of vivid healing, reproducing, reviving powers, the very sign of great health, an excess that gives the free spirit the dangerous privilege of being permitted to live experimentally and to offer himself to adventure. The privilege of the master free spirit. In between may lie long years of convalescence, years full of multicolored, painful, magical transformations, governed and led by a tough will to heart, which already often dares to dress and disguise itself as health. There is a middle point on the way, which a man having such a fate cannot remember later without being moved. A pale, fine light and sunny happiness are characteristic of it, a feeling of a bird-like freedom, bird-like perspective, bird-like arrogance, something in which curiosity and a tender content are united. A free spirit, this cool term is soothing in that state, almost warming. No longer chained down by hatred and love, one lives without yes, without no, voluntary near, voluntary far, most preferably slipping away, avoiding, fluttering on, gone again, flying upward again. One is spoiled like anyone who has ever seen an enormous multiplicity beneath him, and one becomes the antithesis of those who trouble themselves about things that do not concern them. Indeed, now the free spirit concerns himself only with things, and how many there are, which no longer trouble him. How do I crop a frame in Premiere? Command T if you're on Mac. Another step onward is convalescence. The free spirit again approaches life, slowly of course, almost reactantly, almost suspiciously. It grows warmer around him again, yellower, as it were, feeling and fellow feeling, gain depth, mild breezes of all kinds pass over him. He almost feels as if eyes were only now open to what is near. He is amazed and sits motionless. Where had he been, then? These near and nearest things, how they seem to him transformed. What magical flux they have acquired in the meantime. He glances backward gratefully, grateful to his travelers, to his severity and self-alienation, to this far-off glancers and bird flights into cold heights. How good that he did not stay at home with himself the whole time like a dull, pampered loafer. Fuck, bro, nobody's even watching this shit. Wait, no, that's not why I'm doing this. The real reason why I'm doing this is so I can make a AI deepfake clone of my voice. I want to be able to pick up phone calls on my phone without me actually being there. But the voice will sample all of this. So it's a good way to just get my voice sampled. Shit, it's 11:56. I think I'm going to cut the stream kind of short, guys. I'm kind of tired. And this was mainly just to, like, test the audio and test the stream. I'm going to go do my dishes, take a shower, and maybe eat some ice cream. So, stay tuned for episode 2. Thank you.